and welcome back to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill, and I'm here today with Julie and Library Director Holly. And this week, we're going to talk about Harry Potter read-alikes. So if you like Harry Potter, you're looking for something like that, this is the one for you.
We're also throwing in something new this week. We're going to ask 3 trivia questions about the Harry Potter series. And the first person who correctly comments in the comments with the correct answers to our questions is going to win a free Van de Waals candy bar, compliments of the library. So stay tuned and watch for the trivia questions as we go through our books.
All right, Holly, would you like to get us started with our first book?
I would love to. I love Harry Potter. I brought Crookshanks along with me today. And if you've read Harry Potter, you know that it starts out with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. But did you know that there's other stories about the Sorcerer's Stone as well? This one, called The Alchemist, the Immortals Nicholas Flamel series by Michael Scott. It's the first book in a series, and the main character is Nicholas Flamel, who has an appearance in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This is about him and his very long life due to the elixir of life, which was the Sorcerer's Stone in Harry Potter. And it's also a story about 2 teenagers who are learning about their history as well and how they fit into this story of the Sorcerer's Stone and history and everything. It's a really great fantasy read for people. And it's actually a young adult book, but I read it as an adult and I really loved it. So it's very good. The Alchemist by Michael Scott.
Very good. And my first pick today is Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the first in a series called Shades of Magic. There are 3 books in this series, including this one, A Gathering of Shadows and A Conjuring of Light. Kell is one of the last of the Antares, magicians with a rare, coveted ability to travel between parallel Londons, red, gray, white, and once upon a time, black. Kell was raised in Arns, Red London, and officially serves the Marsh Empire as an ambassador, traveling between the frequent bloody regime changes in White London and the court of George III in the dullest of Londons, the one without any magic left to see. Unofficially, Kell is a smuggler, servicing people willing to pay for even the smallest glimpses of a world they'll never see. It's a defiant hobby with dangerous consequences, which Kell is now seeing firsthand. After an exchange goes awry, Kell escapes Grey London and runs into Delilah Bart, a cut purse and with lofty aspirations, and she first robs him, then saves him from the deadly enemy, and finally forces Kell to spirit her to another world for a proper adventure. Now perilous magic is afoot, and treachery lurks at every turn. To save all of the worlds, they'll first need to stay alive. So, Darker Shade of Magic.
And my first pick is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This was published back in 2009. I know, Holly, you've read this and liked this book. This is the first in the Magicians trilogy series. It's a thrilling and original coming-of-age novel for adults about a young man practicing magic in the real world. Quentin Coldwater is brilliant, but he's miserable. A senior in high school, he's still secretly preoccupied with a series of fantasy novels he read as a child set in a magical land called Fillory. Imagine his surprise when he finds himself unexpectedly admitted to a very secret, very exclusive college of magic in upstate New York, where he receives a thorough and rigorous education in the craft of modern sorcery. So the magician boldly moves into uncharted literary territory, imagining magic as practiced by real people with their capricious desires and volatile emotions. The author of this book creates an utterly original world in which good and evil aren't black and white, love and sex aren't simple or innocent, and power comes at a terrible price. So, The Magicians.
The Magicians is really a book for Harry Potter lovers. And it's great because it has series on Netflix also, so you can watch the TV series too. But it's definitely for adults, not young adults. So one of the things I love most about Harry Potter is it's such a good example of fantasy. I love to read fantasy, and when J.K. Rowling was writing the books, she read a lot of fantasy herself, and a lot of the things that she wrote in the books was based on books that she had read previously. So my next book is going to be the classic founding title of fantasy fiction The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien was the father of all modern fantasy, and if you haven't read this, you really should. It's a classic. It's a story about Bilbo Baggins, who gets offered to go on a journey by the wizard Gandalf. And the journey is interesting because his companions are dwarves. And they're journeying to the Misty Mountains to take back the Dwarf Mountain from the dragon Smaug. So a lot of the same elements that you find in Harry Potter, dragons and magic. There's some disappearing in here, but not an invisibility cloak. Are all found in this book as well. So you should read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien.
It inspired J.K. Rowling. It might inspire you. My next choice is called Dreams and Shadows by C. Robert Cargill. Oh, and this is going to be my first trivia question for you, for Harry Potter trivia. What is Hermione's patroness? So, answer in the bottom.
Patronus.
Patronus, is that how you say it?
Patronus.
I didn't watch the movies. I read the books. So, Dreams and Shadows by C. Robert Cargill. This is also the first book in a series, but there are only 2 books in the series. The second one is called The Queen of Dark Things. There is another world than our own, one no closer than a kiss, and one no further than our nightmares, where all the stuff of which dreams are made is real, and magic is just a step away. But once you see that world, you will never be the same. Dreams and Shadows takes us beyond this veil. Once bold explorers and youthful denizens of this magical realm, Ewan is now an Austin musician who just met his dream girl, and Colby, meanwhile, cannot escape the consequences of an innocent wish. But while Ewan and Colby left the Limestone Kingdom as children, it has never forgotten them. And in a world where angels relax on the rooftops, whiskey-swilling genies argue metaphysics with foul-mouthed wizards, and monsters in the shadows feed on fear, you can never outrun your fate. Dreams and Shadows is a stunning and evocative debut about magic and monsters in our world and in ourself. Author C. Robert Cargill is an acclaimed film critic and screenwriter, and his work is often compared to part Neil Gaiman, part Guillermo del Toro, and part William S. Burroughs.
My second pick is the big one, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was published back in 2007. This has a 4.51 rating on Goodreads, so pretty good rating. This book is also called The Kingkiller Chronicle Day 1 and is the first book in the ongoing fantasy trilogy, followed by The Wise Man's Fear and The Doors of Stone. This is also a tale of a magically gifted young man who grows to be the most notorious wizard his world has ever seen. It's an intimate narrative of his childhood in a troupe of traveling players, his years spent as a near-feral orphan in a crime-ridden city, his daringly brazen yet successful bid to enter a legendary school of magic, and his life as a fugitive after the murder of a king. All of these form a gripping coming-of-age story unrivaled in recent literature. It's a high-action story written with a poet's hand. It's a masterpiece that will transport readers into the body and mind of a wizard.
That sounds really good. And Patrick Rothfuss is a great author to watch because he's a Wisconsin author.
Yep.
So my next pick is The House in the Cerulean Sea. Something I forgot to mention about The Alchemist was all of the fantastical creatures that are in this. So if you're a fan of Harry Potter because of the fantastical creatures, there's a Sphinx in here, lots of different things. But this book also has fantastical creatures. Mermaids, werewolves, lots of different types of things. But the interesting thing about those creatures in this book is that they're all children. And they're children, the last of their kind, that are being raised in an orphanage by a very nice man who also happens to have a secret of his own. And the gist of the story is how they want to save the orphanage and make a way for people to accept the beings that lived here for who they are. So it's a very good story in that respect, and it really matches Harry Potter because of the fantastical creatures. And but it's definitely a story for adults, even though the main characters are mostly kids. So, very good story. The House on the Cerulean Sea, in the Cerulean Sea, by T.J. Klune.
My next one is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. Rainbow Rowell is one of my favorite authors. Simon Snow is the worst chosen one who's ever been chosen. That's what his roommate Boz says. And Boz might be evil and a vampire and a complete jit, but he's probably right. Half the time Simon can't even make his wand work, and the other half he starts something on fire. His mentor's avoiding him, his girlfriend broke up with him, and there's a magic-eating monster running around, wearing Simon's face. Baz would be having a field day with all this if he were here. It's their last year of the Watford School of Magics, and Simon's infuriating nemesis didn't even bother to show up. Carry On is the rise and fall of Simon Snow, is a ghost story, a love story, and a mystery, and has as much kissing and talking as you'd expect from a Rainbow Rowell story, but far, far more monsters. There are 3 books in this series. The next one is Wayward Son, and then Any Way the Wind Blows. So, carry on.
I love Carry On, and you can't read it without pairing it with Fangirl, by Rainbow Rowell, which is a spoof on Harry Potter and Carry On, so it's very good.
My next pick is a little darker. This one's called Boy's Life by Robert McCammon, published back in 1991. An Alabama boy's innocence is shaken by murder and madness in the 1960s South in this novel by the New York Times bestselling author of Swan Song. So it's 1964 in idyllic Zephyr, Alabama. People either work for the paper mill up the Tecumseh River or the local dairy. It's a simple life, but it stirs the impressionable imagination of 12-year-old aspiring writer Corey McKenson. He's certain he sends spirits whispering in the churchyard. He's heard of the weird bootleggers who lurk in the dark outside of town, but he's not sure if it's them. Then one morning, when he's accompanying his dad on his milk route, he sees a car careen off the road and slowly sink into the fathomless Saxon's Lake. His father dives into the icy water to rescue the driver and finds a corpse, naked and handcuffed to the steering wheel, a copper wire tightened around the stranger's neck. Told you this one's a little darker. Now, the murder of this unknown man who lies in the dark lake causes Corey's life to explode into a kaleidoscope of clues and deepening puzzles. His quest to understand the forces of good and evil at work in his hometown lead him through a maze of dangers and fascinations. In time, the rest of the townsfolk seem to forget all about this unsolved murder, but Corey just can't. He and his dad keep searching, and their search for the truth is a journey into a world where innocence and evil collide. What lies before them is the stuff of fear and awe, magic and madness, fantasy and reality. This book strongly echoes the childhood elegies of King and Bradbury and was a winner of both the Bram Stoker and the World Fantasy Awards. So a little darker one, but Boy's Life. And my first Harry Potter trivia question is, we are celebrating Harry's birthday this week. If you've been in our library, you may have seen our display where we tell you how old Harry is going to be, but we want to know, how old is Harry Potter this week?
That sounds like a really good book. Dark indeed, though.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting that you picked a mystery, Julie, because I also picked a mystery. You know, underlying all the fantasy and those fantastical elements of Harry Potter, they're really a mystery series.
Mm-hmm.
So the mystery I picked is called The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley. This is also first book in a series, and the main character in this book is young Flavia Deleuze. She's a child also, but she's extremely smart. Probably just as smart as Hermione. But she follows a bunch of clues and uses her wits to solve some mysteries. And, of course, the pie and the picture of the crow and the stamp on the cover all play important key roles in solving this mystery. So, The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley. It's a really good mystery.
To check that one out.
Awesome. And our last, do you remember what our last trivia question was?
I do. What is the full name of Professor Dumbledore?
So there you got your 3 questions. Answer below, get a free candy bar. So my next book is a children's book. This is the Septimus Heap, the series, Book 1, Magic by Angie Sage. This is in the children's section, which makes sense because J.K. Rowling practically invented middle grade books. So, the seventh son of the seventh son, aptly named Septimus Heap, is stolen in the night he is born by a midwife who pronounces him dead. That same night, the baby's father, Silas Heap, comes across a bundle in the snow containing a newborn girl with violet eyes. The Heaps take this helpless newborn into their home, name her Jenna, and raise her as their own. But who is this mysterious baby girl, and what really happened to their beloved son, Septimus? The first part of this enthralling new series leads readers on a fantastic journey filled with quirky characters, clever charms, potions and spells, and a yearning to uncover the mystery at the heart of the story, who is Septimus Heap. And there are 7 books in this series, so if you get into it, you got a lot of books to read. So, the Septimus Heap series.
I love the Septimus Heap series. Even though it's a kid's book, it's good for adults too. I read it as an adult, and it has a lot of good magical elements to it, like the seventh son of the seventh son. There's some pretty scary witches in there, and some other scary villains. But reading that book is like walking back in time through history, because the author does a really good job of making the scenes come to life for people.
Oh,
so
cool.
I love that book. I love the series.
And my last pick for today is The Thinking Woman's Guide to Real Magic. This is a debut novel by Emily Croy Barker, and it's been compared to the popular fantasy novels All Souls Trilogy by Deborah Harkness and The Magicians, which I talked about earlier. And People magazine said if Hermione Granger had been an American who never received an invitation to Hogwarts, this might be her story. So, during a miserable weekend at a friend's wedding, eager to forget about her disastrous breakup and stalled dissertation, Nora Fisher wanders off into a graveyard and somehow finds herself in another realm. There she meets the glamorous Alyssa, who introduces Nora to a decadent new world where time is meaningless, and she also introduces Nora to her gorgeous son, Raiklin. Nora soon forgets about the wedding that she's there for and her teaching, and she ends up staying at Alyssa's house for an indefinite amount of time, attending parties every night and going hunting with her new friends in the day. But when the elegant veneer of this dreamland shatters, Nora finds herself in a fairy tale gone incredibly wrong. And the only way she can survive is by learning real magic herself. So this author did write a second book. It's called How to Talk to a Goddess and Other Lessons in Real Magic, which is published earlier this summer. So check out the writing of Emily Croy Barker.
Awesome. And that looks like all we have for today. So remember to answer those questions and put them below so that you can win a candy bar. First one that gets it wins. And like and share this video because we love to hear, and tell us what you have read that reminds you of Harry Potter. And happy birthday to Harry Potter.
Happy birthday, Harry Potter. Thank you for watching our video this week. Bye everybody.
Bye.